Hi, I'm Jen. I'll be playing the Martian Order, and we will be defending our territory at all costs.
Hi, my name's Andrew. I'm going to be commanding the human forces, and we're going to take back the land that we've claimed.
The war for Mars is fought one position at a time. Fresh from their victory at the outer gate, colonial commanders waste no time pressing beyond the defensive perimeter. Their next objective, Shardvale Frontier, a strange and living territory of the Martian Order. But the attack begins with an early setback. The insertion attempt fails, fracture readings spike, deployment calculations drift, and valuable warp flare reserves are lost before the battle even begins. The defenders seize the initiative, forcing the human assault force to react instead of advance. The battle for Shardvale Frontier is underway. With the Martian deployment complete, the human colonies begin their advance. The warp specialist immediately commits valuable warp flare reserves. Reality bends around the warp specialist as the heavy support mech vanishes from the formation and reappears at the forefront of the advance. The maneuver accelerates the colonial advance and places one of their most powerful assets at the center of the coming battle. Round 1 ends without bloodshed. Across Shardvale Frontier, both forces commit to their opening maneuvers, preparing for the clash to come. Then the momentum shifts as the second round begins. The human colonies seize the initiative. With heavy footsteps that shook the fractured ground beneath it, the heavy support mech advanced on to the primary objective, claiming the strategic position for the colonies. Around it, colonial forces spread outward, establishing firing lanes and securing key approaches as the battle line widened across the shattered Martian landscape. The Martian response came swiftly. Twin Dinoraptors emerged from the fractured terrain, moving with unnatural speed. One broke away toward a secondary objective, securing it for the Order. The other charged directly toward the center of the battlefield, leaping into the contested zone occupied by the heavy support mech. The remaining Martian forces completed their deployment, spreading through the fractured ruins and crystal growths that dominated the battlefield. The Shard Mauler lumbered forward behind the advancing line, its massive crystalline frame looming over the contested center, and the human colonies opened fire. One colonial rifleman expended a warp flare, overcharging a shot aimed at the advancing Shard Mauler. The round screamed across the battlefield. It missed. The Martian advance continued unhindered. The Martians seized the initiative again in round 3. Crystalline warforms surged toward the center of the battlefield, reinforcing the contested ground around the primary objective. What had begun as a standoff between a Dinoraptor and the heavy support mech quickly escalated as more Martian forces converged on the position, determined to wrest control of the battlefield's most valuable objective. Round 3 erupted in a storm of gunfire and flying crystal. Shots found their marks on both sides, but neither force could land a decisive blow. Armor plating, bark-like hide, and dense crystal growths absorbed impacts that would have crippled lesser targets. Time and again, attacks struck true only to leave little more than scorched metal and fractured shards behind. The battle around the primary objective grew increasingly desperate. Colonial forces struggled to push the Martians back, while the Order continued its relentless advance. Though neither side suffered significant losses, the exchange revealed an important truth of the conflict on Mars. A hit alone is not enough. Only weapons powerful enough to overcome a target's resilience can turn accuracy into destruction. Despite the odds, the colonial riflemen advanced. The soldiers knew they were outmatched by the towering Shard Mauler and the hunting Dinoraptor stalking the flanks, but the objectives had to be secured. With disciplined determination, the riflemen pushed onto the secondary positions, placing themselves directly in the path of enemies far deadlier than themselves. For the colonies, holding ground mattered more than survival. The riflemen struck with all the momentum of the rush. Combat knives found gaps, joints, and exposed growths, each soldier searching for the one perfect opening that might bring down an enemy far beyond their weight class. But the Dinoraptor and Shard Mauler endured the assault, their massive forms shrugging off blows that lacked the force to do meaningful harm. The Colonials fought bravely. What they needed was a miracle. The Martians answered immediately. The Bloodroot Stalker and the heavy support mech traded blows at the center of the battlefield, but neither could gain the upper hand. Elsewhere, the riflemen remained locked against enemies far beyond their ability to bring down. As the fighting intensified, a strange pattern emerged. Attacks were landing, Steel struck crystal, claws scraped armor, yet neither side could deliver a decisive blow. The previous engagement had been a slaughter. This one had become a war of attrition. With both forces trapped in battles, they simply lacked the firepower to finish. Round 4 began with the Martian order maintaining the initiative. Sensing the battle reaching a critical point, Martian forces converged on the primary objective. The towering tree warden advanced into the contested zone, its massive form dominating the center of the battlefield. A Bloodroot initiate slipped around one flank, while a Bloodroot stalker circled the other, tightening the noose around the colonial position. The human colonies responded in kind. The exosuit maneuvered into position, preparing for the decisive clash that now seemed inevitable, while an excavator frame pushed forward to reinforce the embattled objective. The Martians held the battlefield, but no clear targets presented themselves. The colonies made their opportunity count. An exosuit leveled its carbine and fired into the advancing Bloodroot stalker. The burst struck true, punching through the creature's defenses and dropping it before it could reach the objective. With the Martian flank suddenly exposed, the excavator frame surged forward. Its heavy chassis crashed into the remaining Bloodroot stalker, carrying enough momentum to strike first as the melee erupted. The stalker never had a chance to respond. The Martians struck back. At the center of the battlefield, the Dino Raptor finally brought down the heavy support mech, tearing through armor and machinery to secure the primary objective for the order. On the flanks, however, the Martians could not finish the job. A Dino Raptor failed to bring down one Colonial rifleman, while the Shard Mauler was unable to remove the other from the objective. Against impossible odds, both riflemen survived. As the final round approached, the Martian order held the center, but the colony still clung stubbornly, contesting the flanks. The final round began with the human colonies seizing the initiative. An excavator frame pushed onto the primary objective, boldly contesting the position against both a Dino Raptor and the towering tree warden. Nearby, the exosuit and warp specialist advanced to support the desperate stand at the center. On the flanks, the two Colonial riflemen made one last effort to turn the tide. From their hard-won objectives, they attacked the Dino Raptor and Shard Mauler that had hunted them throughout the battle. Once again, courage proved insufficient against enemies so heavily protected. The Martians answered swiftly. The Dino Raptor tore through the excavator frame, clearing the primary objective and securing the center for the order. Yet even in the battle's final moments, the Martians could not remove the stubborn riflemen from the secondary objectives. Time after time, the soldiers survived attacks that should have ended them. When the dust settled, the Martian order controlled the center and had claimed more kills across the battlefield. The Colonial riflemen had denied both flanks until the very end, but it was not enough. Martian victory.
The Martians held our ground. We battled fiercely and won.
So we lost. It's okay. We'll be back. We always come back. Humans! Super resilient creatures.